There comes a moment in life that changes you. Not loudly, not all at once, but permanently. It is the moment you stop asking, "Why did they not choose me?" and start asking, "Why was I trying so hard to be chosen by people who never truly saw me?" Because that is where the illusion breaks. Most people do not recognize your value while you are constantly giving it. They do not notice the loyalty, the patience, the emotional labor, the understanding, the sacrifices, the quiet ways you make their life easier. They do not notice how many times you swallowed your pride to keep the peace, how many times you explained yourself with grace, how many times you showed up when you were tired, hurting, overlooked, or uncertain. Most people only understand value when absence creates a silence they cannot control, when the messages stop, when the effort disappears, when the calm leaves the room, when the support they leaned on is no longer there. And by then, it is usually too late. The Stoics understood something most people spend years, sometimes decades, learning the hard way. If you want to become unforgettable, stop trying to be liked. Start becoming rare. Rare in your self-respect, rare in your discipline, rare in your emotional control, rare in your standards, rare in a world full of noise, impulse, dependency, and performance. Because the most valuable person in the room is almost never the loudest, not the one demanding attention, not the one trying hardest to impress, not the one constantly proving themselves. It is the one who has mastered themselves so deeply that their presence changes the atmosphere. And when that person leaves, everyone feels it. So if you have ever been underestimated, ignored, taken for granted, replaced, overlooked, or loved only when it was convenient, this is for you. Because this is not about revenge. This is not about making people suffer. This is not about becoming cold. And this is not about turning pain into ego. This is about becoming so grounded in your own character that losing you becomes a lesson people never forget. Not because you punish them, but because they never easily find another person like you. These are 7 Stoic ways to become so valuable they will regret losing you. And the final one is the deepest, because it has almost nothing to do with status, attention, or power. It has to do with impact. Let us begin. Lesson 1: stop performing for approval. Most people are not exhausted because life is hard. They are exhausted because they are acting all day. Performing to seem likable, performing to seem agreeable, performing to seem useful, performing to seem desirable, performing to seem strong, performing to seem easy to keep. They say yes when they mean no. They smile when they feel disrespected. They laugh when something hurts. They downplay their standards so nobody feels challenged. They hide their truth because they are afraid honesty might cost them connection. And little by little they disappear, not physically, internally, piece by piece. Until one day they look around and realize something painful. The people around them do not actually know them. They know the edited version, the safe version, the useful version, the version designed to avoid rejection. They know the performance. And performances can always be replaced. If people only experience the version of you that was built to please them, then what they value is not you. It is your convenience. Marcus Aurelius did not ask, "How do I become admired?" He asked a better question, "Who am I becoming?" That question is dangerous in the best possible way, because it forces you to face something uncomfortable. Are your actions coming from principle or from fear? Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone, fear of losing someone, fear of not being enough, fear of being abandoned if you stop overgiving. Fear makes people betray themselves in subtle ways, not dramatic ways, daily ways. A delayed text you still answer with enthusiasm, a disrespectful comment you pretend not to hear, a boundary you keep postponing, a truth you keep swallowing, a standard you keep lowering just to stay chosen. And this is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes liberation. Because the Stoics believed a person loses their freedom the moment their worth depends on other people's approval. The moment you need applause to feel secure, you become easy to control. The moment you need validation to feel real, you begin negotiating your dignity. Something changes when you stop performing. Your energy becomes cleaner, your words become simpler, your boundaries become stronger, your presence becomes real. You stop trying to manage everyone's perception of you. You stop shrinking to fit into rooms you have already outgrown. You stop begging for a seat at tables that charge self-respect as the price of admission. And ironically, that is when your value rises. Because authenticity is rare, copies are common, masks are common, social performances are common. But a person who is fully themselves, without arrogance, without apology, without performance, that person is difficult to replace. The more deeply you become yourself, the harder you become to replicate. So stop asking how to be chosen more often. Start asking how to become more real. Because the first step toward becoming unforgettable is refusing to be fake just to stay welcome. And once your mask falls, your value begins. Lesson 2. Master your emotions so nobody can easily control you. Here is one of the coldest truths in human nature. Whoever can control your emotions can often control your behavior. If someone can trigger your anger on command, they can influence your decisions. If someone can manipulate your insecurity, they can steer your actions. If someone can provoke your fear of abandonment, they can keep you attached to what hurts you. This is why emotional mastery is not just a personality trait. It is power, real power. Not loud power, not performative power, not the kind that dominates a room, the kind that keeps you steady when everyone else is reacting. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And if you really understand that, your life changes. Because most suffering does not begin with the event, it begins with the story. Someone pulls away and the mind says, "I am not enough." Someone criticizes you and the mind says, "I am being attacked." Someone ignores you and the mind says, "I am being rejected." Someone leaves and the mind says, "I have lost my value." The event happens once, but the mind can replay it 1,000 times. That is where people lose themselves, not in what happened, in what they make it mean. Picture this: you send a message, hours pass, then a day, no answer. The outer event is simple, silence. But inside the mind, a storm begins. Maybe they are losing interest. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I am not important. Maybe I never was. Reality gave you one fact. The mind built an entire world, and most people live inside that world as if it were truth. The Stoics refused to do that. They trained themselves to pause between stimulus and response, to separate facts from fantasies, to observe emotion without immediately obeying it. That is not suppression, that is leadership. Because there is a difference between feeling anger and becoming ruled by anger. A difference between feeling hurt and becoming destructive. A difference between feeling fear and letting fear choose for you. Most people think strength means intensity. It does not. Very often, strength is restraint. It is the ability to feel something deeply and still not hand your mind over to it. Anyone can react. Anyone can send the impulsive message. Anyone can explode, chase, accuse, over-explain, beg for closure, demand reassurance. But the person who pauses, the person who breathes, the person who says, "I will not make a permanent decision from a temporary emotion," that person becomes dangerous in the best way. Marcus Aurelius lived through war, disease, betrayal, political pressure, and personal grief. And still, he kept returning to one discipline. Do not let external chaos become internal disorder. Think about the calmest person you know, the one who does not panic under pressure, the one who does not explode in conflict, the one who does not lose themselves every time life becomes uncertain. Why do people trust them? Because steadiness creates safety. Their presence lowers the temperature. Most people amplify chaos, very few reduce it. So become one of the few. Become the person who cannot be baited easily, the person who cannot be owned through insecurity, the person who cannot be manipulated through emotional urgency. Not because you feel nothing, because you finally learned that not every feeling deserves the microphone. Emotions are like weather, they pass through, they change, they move. Feel everything, but obey carefully. Because once people realize they can no longer control you through your emotions, they begin to treat you differently, with more respect, more caution, sometimes even more honesty. And if they do not, that tells you everything you need to know. Either way, you win. Because emotional chaos is common, emotional mastery is rare, and rare things are difficult to replace. Lesson 3. Build a life that does not depend on anyone's presence. Many people believe their pain comes from losing someone, but often the deeper pain comes from something else. They made one person their center. A relationship became their identity. A friendship became their foundation. A partner became their emotional oxygen. A boss became their source of worth. And when that connection weakens, the whole structure shakes. Not because love is wrong, because dependence is dangerous. The Stoics did not warn against love. They warned against attachment without inner foundation. There is a difference. Love says, I appreciate your presence. Dependency says, I cannot feel whole without it. Love is free, dependency is frightened. And frightened people abandon themselves quickly. They overlook red flags, they tolerate half-love, they excuse confusion, they cling to uncertainty, they accept crumbs because the alternative feels like emotional death. That is not connection, that is captivity. Imagine two trees growing side by side. One grows deep roots into the earth, the other leans entirely on the first. From a distance, both look connected, but when the storm comes, only one truly stands on its own. That is how human beings work too. If your peace depends entirely on another person's consistency, then your peace is fragile, and fragile peace always makes you easier to control. You see it in small moments. One delayed reply ruins your mood. One cold conversation ruins your whole day. One shift in someone's energy makes you question your value. Why? Because too much of your identity has been outsourced. This is why valuable people build a life beyond relationships. Not a lonely life, not a closed-off life, not a numb life, a full life. A life with purpose, a life with discipline, a life with routines, a life with direction, a life with standards, a life that still has shape even when someone leaves. There is something magnetic about a person who has a center, a person who enjoys their own mind, a person who has work to do, books to read, goals to pursue, habits to protect, and principles to live by. A person whose world does not collapse every time another person becomes inconsistent. That energy changes how people experience you. Because now you are not saying, please do not leave me. You are saying, I value your presence, but I will survive your absence. That is dignity. That is power. And strangely enough, that is also what creates healthier love. Because now your connection is a choice, not a desperate dependency, not a silent hostage situation, a choice. And choice is always more valuable than need. So build your body, build your mind, build your habits, build your mission, build your spiritual life, build your standards, build a life so deep that nobody becomes your oxygen. Then if someone leaves, yes, it may hurt. You may grieve, you may miss them, but your world will remain standing. And people notice that. They notice the person who remains grounded through disappointment, the person who can love deeply without becoming dependent, the person who does not collapse simply because someone else became inconsistent. That kind of strength is unforgettable. Because when people lose someone who was whole before they arrived, they realize too late that they did not lose a dependent person. They lost a grounded one, and those are rare. Lesson 4. Become excellent in silence. One of the strangest habits in modern life is this. People want recognition before results. They announce the comeback before the discipline. They post the mission before the sacrifice. They talk about healing before they have changed their patterns. They speak of standards before they have practiced them in private. And then they wonder why nothing really changes. The Stoics taught the opposite. Less announcement, more embodiment, less talking, more training, less image, more substance. Because real value does not need constant advertisement. It reveals itself. A disciplined person reveals themselves. A trustworthy person reveals themselves. A competent person reveals themselves. A calm person reveals themselves. Character becomes visible over time, whether you announce it or not. Think of a blacksmith standing alone near a furnace. No audience, no applause, no camera, no recognition, just repetition, heat, pressure, hammer, fire, again, again, again. Nobody sees the hours that turn raw metal into something sharp. They only see the blade when it is finished. That is how excellence works. The world sees the result. Very few respect the silence that produced it. Epictetus was born a slave. No status, no comfort, no advantages. Yet eventually powerful men sent their sons to learn from him. Why? Because while other people obsessed over appearance, he built something no one could take. His mind, his discipline, his judgment, his character. The people who become unforgettable are usually not the ones shouting the loudest about growth. They are the ones quietly becoming different. In the early mornings, no one sees. In the workouts, no one applauds. In the books, no one asks about. In the boundaries, no one congratulates. In the temptations, they resist alone. In the standards, they keep even when nobody would know if they broke them. That is where value is forged, not in attention, in solitude. And there is something deeply unsettling in a good way about a person who disappears for a while and returns changed. Not louder, not arrogant, not desperate to prove anything, just stronger. Their words are tighter, their energy is steadier, their standards are clearer, their habits are sharper, their tolerance for nonsense is lower, their self-respect is no longer negotiable. That kind of transformation carries weight because it was earned in private. It was not performed for approval. Marcus Aurelius never wrote his private journals for the world to praise him. He wrote them privately, trying to govern himself, trying to become better, trying to stay worthy of his role. Because when growth becomes internal, it lasts. External motivation fades, applause fades, attention fades, validation fades, but internal standards remain. There is also another reason silent excellence is powerful. It protects your energy. When you announce every plan too early, you leak momentum. When you explain every vision to people who have not built anything themselves, you invite noise. When you speak too much before roots are formed, you weaken your own discipline. Some things grow better in quiet. So stop narrating every transformation. Stop explaining every new standard. Stop warning people that you are about to change. Just change. Let your routine speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your results speak. Because when your life becomes evidence, your words become less necessary. And there is something unforgettable about a person whose presence carries proof. Proof of growth, proof of restraint, proof of depth, proof of self-command. That kind of person becomes difficult to replace, not because they ask for attention, because they embody value. Lesson 5, make your word mean something. We live in a time where words have become cheap. People promise loyalty, then disappear when things become inconvenient. People promise honesty, then say whatever keeps them liked. People promise change, then repeat the same pattern the very next week. People say, I am here for you, I have got you. You can trust me, I will do better, I promise. And reality says otherwise. That is why integrity feels so rare now, and anything rare becomes valuable. The Stoics placed enormous weight on character, because character remains when appearance fails. And one of the clearest signs of character is simple. Do your words and your actions belong to the same person? Sit with that, because many people speak from intention but live through impulse. They mean well, they feel sincerely in the moment, they promise with emotion. But emotion is not integrity, consistency is. The word integrity comes from the idea of wholeness. A person of integrity is not divided. What they say and what they do are connected. Their speech is not separate from their conduct. That is why trustworthy people feel different. You do not have to decode them. You do not have to read between the lines. You do not have to wonder which version of them will show up today. They are coherent. Think about the people you trust most. Usually it is not the most charismatic person, not the most entertaining, not the most impressive talker. It is the person who follows through. If they say they will call, they call. If they say they will show up, they show up. If they say no, their no is real. That kind of reliability changes everything. In friendship, in love, in leadership, in business, in family. People spend years trying to become more respected, more influential, more persuasive. And often the answer is painfully simple: become trustworthy. Because trust creates gravity. But there is a deeper layer to this. The most important promises are not the ones you make to others. They are the ones you make to yourself. I will wake up early. I will stop chasing what disrespects me. I will leave what keeps wounding me. I will stay disciplined. I will protect my peace. Every time you make one of those promises and break it, something weakens inside. Not your image, your self-trust. And when self-trust breaks down, confidence disappears with it. Because true confidence is not loudness, it is not arrogance, it is not social dominance. It is the quiet knowledge that when you say something, you mean it. That when you decide, you follow through. That your inner voice has earned credibility. And the only way to build that credibility is through evidence. Small promises kept repeatedly. That is Stoic discipline, not grand declarations, daily alignment. Quietly doing what you said you would do, even when nobody is watching, especially then. People always notice patterns. Eventually, they see the one who is dependable when others are inconsistent, the one who is honest when others are strategic, the one whose words are grounded in reality. And when they lose a person like that, they do not just lose affection. They lose certainty. They lose steadiness. That kind of loss is expensive. So make your word expensive. Speak carefully, promise less, deliver more. Because when your word means something, your presence begins to mean something too, and both become very hard to replace. Lesson 6. Learn to walk away before you are forced to. There comes a moment in every person's life when reality stops whispering and starts speaking clearly. Stay or leave, hold on or let go. Keep negotiating with what keeps hurting you, or finally accept what has already become obvious. Most people wait too long, far too long. They wait until the disrespect becomes undeniable. They wait until the disappointment becomes routine. They wait until their confidence has been worn thin. They wait until staying hurts more than leaving. And by then, the damage has already spread. Why do people stay so long? Because hope is intoxicating. Hope can make you ignore patterns. Hope can make you excuse what should disqualify someone. Hope can make you confuse potential with reality. They could change, they did not mean it. They are just going through something. Maybe if I am more patient, maybe if I explain it one more time, maybe if I love them better. But reality keeps asking the same question: what is actually happening? The Stoics were not pessimists, they were realists, and realism is mercy. Because the moment you stop arguing with reality, your strength begins to return. Epictetus taught that suffering grows when we demand that life be something other than what it is. We want people to become who they are not. We want broken patterns to become healthy just because we are tired of being hurt. We want red flags to turn green because we are emotionally invested. But reality does not bend for emotional attachment. Sooner or later, truth stands there in silence and waits for you to stop looking away. Imagine holding a rope tied to a ship that has already left the harbor. The ship is moving. Your hands are bleeding. Your body is exhausted. Every second you keep holding on hurts more, and still you refuse to let go. Not because holding on is helping, because letting go feels unbearable. That is how many people live emotionally, holding on to relationships that already ended in spirit, holding on to jobs that are draining their soul, holding on to friendships built on convenience, holding on to versions of themselves they already outgrew. And every day they stay too long, they lose a little more of themselves. The Stoic response is simple but not easy. See clearly. Not what you hope, not what you fear, not what you fantasize about, what is. Because clear sight creates clear action. And one of the highest forms of self-respect is the ability to stop negotiating with what repeatedly dishonors you. This does not mean leaving in rage. In fact, rage often means you are still emotionally entangled. Real power is quieter than that. It looks like clarity. It looks like restraint. It looks like a person saying, "This no longer aligns with my peace, my standards, or my dignity," and then leaving. No speech, no chaos, no begging to be understood, no trying to force another person to finally see your value, just a closed door. That kind of exit creates a different kind of silence, a heavy silence. Because most people expect access to continue. They expect another chance, another explanation, another emotional opening. But when someone with self-respect calmly removes their presence, reality teaches the lesson words never could. You had access to something valuable, and you mishandled it. That realization follows people, sometimes immediately, sometimes much later, but it follows them. Not because you wanted revenge, because dignity leaves a mark. And here is the deeper reason walking away increases your value. It proves that your presence is not guaranteed, it is earned. People often take for granted what they assume will always be there. So ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you staying longer than your dignity wants to? What are you still excusing? What truth have you already seen but keep trying not to accept? And more importantly, what would a deeply self-respecting person do next? That answer may hurt, but it will free you. Because one of the most valuable qualities a human being can possess is this: the ability to leave before life has to drag them out. That is strength, that is wisdom, and that is a form of self-respect people never forget. Lesson 7. Become the kind of person who leaves people better. This is the deepest lesson of all. Because becoming valuable is not only about becoming harder to replace. It is about becoming someone whose presence genuinely improves the quality of life around them. Think about that carefully. What happens to people after they spend time with you? Do they leave more anxious, more drained, more confused, more insecure? Or do they leave steadier, clearer, more honest, more encouraged, more grounded in what matters? This is where Stoicism is often misunderstood. People imagine Stoics as cold, detached, distant, almost emotionless. But real Stoicism was never about emotional emptiness. It was about disciplined virtue. Strength directed wisely, power without chaos, self-mastery used for good. Marcus Aurelius spent his life coming back to one essential idea: do what is right, contribute where you can, do not become another source of disorder in the world. That is a radical standard, because it means your value is not measured only by what you achieve. It is also measured by what your presence does to the atmosphere around you. Some people enter a room and bring tension. Others bring ego. Others bring noise, insecurity, unpredictability, and drama. But some people bring peace, not because they have easy lives, not because they are perfect, because they made a decision somewhere deep inside themselves. My pain will not become everyone else's burden. My wounds will not become my identity. My struggles will not become an excuse to spread confusion. Those people are rare. They listen with presence. They speak with honesty. They carry themselves with steadiness. They do not manipulate. They do not poison every interaction with ego. They do not make every room pay for their internal disorder. Instead, they bring clarity, and clarity is a gift. Think of a candle entering a dark room. It does not argue with the darkness. It does not panic because the room is dark. It does not announce itself over and over. It simply provides light, and the room changes. That is what high-value people do. Their presence changes the environment. A conversation feels more honest around them. A difficult moment feels more manageable around them. A chaotic situation feels less chaotic around them. Why? Because their inner life is no longer at war with itself, and that peace radiates. This is the final irony most people never understand. The more you stop trying to be unforgettable, the more unforgettable you become. Because unforgettable people do not chase significance, they embody it. They become examples, they become standards, They become reminders of what maturity looks like, what character looks like, what self-respect looks like, what calm strength looks like. And when they leave, people feel it immediately. Not because they were flashy, not because they were loud, not because they demanded appreciation. Because they carried something real, something rare, something people only understand after it is gone. A certain steadiness, a certain honesty, a certain depth, a certain emotional safety, a certain way of making life feel less chaotic. That is why the highest form of value is not being admired. It is being deeply beneficial. It is being the kind of person whose presence leaves people better than it found them. And if someone loses a person like that, they may spend years looking for another, only to discover that what they lost was not common at all. It was rare, and rare things are not easily replaced. Here is the great irony. The moment you stop trying to make people regret losing you is often the moment they do. Because regret cannot be forced, it can only be realized. You cannot make people see your value on command. You cannot make them become mature enough to recognize what you gave. You cannot force awareness into someone who only understands presence once it becomes absence. And Stoicism teaches you to let go of that. Your job is not to control how other people remember you. Your job is to become someone you respect. Someone disciplined, someone emotionally governed, someone grounded, someone trustworthy, someone courageous enough to walk away, someone deep enough to leave people better than they found them. Because your worth is not something you prove, it is something you build. Quietly, patiently, daily. And one day, maybe the people who underestimated you will understand what they lost. Maybe they will finally recognize the peace you brought, the patience you gave, the loyalty you carried, the steadiness they could not find again. Maybe they will compare everyone after you to the way you made life feel. Maybe. But by then, it will no longer matter the same way. Because the person you became in the process will be worth more than their recognition ever was. That is the Stoic victory. Not being admired, not being chased, not being missed, not being chosen by people who only understand value too late. The victory is becoming so rooted in your own character that nobody's inability to see you can reduce you. And if you walk that path long enough, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to be unforgettable. You simply become difficult to lose. So if you are in that season now, the season where you feel unseen, misunderstood, replaced, or taken for granted, listen carefully. This is not the end of your value. This is the beginning of your clarity. Because you were never meant to spend your life convincing people not to lose you. You were never meant to beg for recognition from those who only appreciate what is easy to consume. You were never meant to trade your peace for proximity. You were never meant to shrink your truth just to remain welcome in places that could not honor your depth. You were meant to become solid. So solid that rejection no longer rearranges your identity. So disciplined that neglect no longer tempts you into self-betrayal. So grounded that even loss cannot make you forget who you are. And one day, whether quietly or all at once, the people who mishandled your presence may look back and finally understand. They may realize how rare it was to be loved by someone with standards, to be supported by someone with depth, to be trusted by someone with integrity, to be known by someone who brought peace instead of chaos. They may realize it, or they may not. But by then, you will no longer be standing in that old place, waiting to be seen. You will have moved on. Not bitter, not cold, not hardened in the ugly way. Just transformed. And that is the part no one can take from you. Not their silence, not their rejection, not their confusion, not their failure to recognize your worth in time. Because once you stop abandoning yourself, everything changes. Your walk changes, your voice changes, your decisions change, your standards change, your life changes. And eventually, the need to be validated by those who failed to value you begins to die. In its place, something stronger is born. Self-respect, clarity, inner freedom, peace. So let them misunderstand you while you build. Let them underestimate you while you sharpen. Let them overlook you while you become. Because the goal was never to make them regret losing you. The goal was to become someone who never again loses themselves. And once that happens, you do not chase value. You become it,